The house is quiet. Changmin and Olivia are getting ready for dinner with friends. They barely speak. Their marriage has long since become a formality. Today, they just need to play the part. Guests arrive. Noise. Laughter. Olivia immediately turns on her charm. She's beaming, joking, the perfect hostess. Changmin stands quietly to the side. He watches. He knows. When she tries so hard, it's for a reason. Everyone's having fun. Changmin gets distracted for a second. He's thinking about a problem at work. His gaze goes blank. He can't even see where he's looking. Olivia notices this. His gaze is directed towards her friend. There is nothing in his eyes except weariness, but that was enough for her. The corner of her lips twitched. She'd been waiting for this moment. The show was over. Now her real game began, and the first step had been taken. Olivia turns sharply to face her husband, her voice loud and clear. "Can't you take your eyes off my friend?" she says. Everyone falls silent. This is inappropriate. Right in front of everyone. Changmin looks at her. He slowly understands. This is not a casual remark. This is the beginning. He doesn't have time to answer. Olivia's hand shoots up in a quick motion. A full glass of red wine flies at him. The cold liquid hits his chest. A red stain quickly spreads across his white shirt. The glass falls to the floor, but doesn't break. The room is quiet. The guests look from Changmin to Olivia. No one knows what to say. The evening is ruined. Changmin stands and looks at his stain. He doesn't try to wipe it away. Then he looks up at his wife. He doesn't see anger on her face. He sees cold satisfaction. She got what she wanted. She took the first step. He is silent. His silence is worse than shouting. The guests begin to whisper nervously. Someone gets up to leave. Olivia no longer looks at her husband. She turns to the guests with an apologetic smile. But everyone already understands. The quiet evening is over. Something else is beginning. The next morning, the house is deathly silent. Changmin is sitting in his office at the computer. He's already wearing a fresh shirt. The guests had quickly left last night. There were no explanations. He didn't bother to find out anything. He just waited. Olivia appears in the office doorway. Her face is calm, a casual morning mask. In her hands, she holds a neat box from an expensive pastry shop. She places it on the edge of his desk. "I bought you a cake," she says neutrally. "I've been thinking about yesterday this morning. I need to smooth things over somehow. Vanilla. Your favorite." She opens the box. Inside lies a perfect sponge cake, covered in an even layer of snow-white frosting. It smells sweet and cloying. Changmin looks up from the screen. He looks at the cake, then at her. His face is expressionless. He's not angry. He's studying. "Olivia," he says quietly and very clearly. His voice is completely even, without reproach. "We've known each other for 10 years. You know perfectly well that I can't stand vanilla. I always have. It's a fact, a statement." He doesn't remind her of it with resentment. He simply reminds her, like the multiplication tables. She knows it. She couldn't forget. There's not a trace of embarrassment on her face. On the contrary, the corners of her lips stretch into a slight, yet utterly cold smile. The same sparkle that flashed in her eyes yesterday, before she poured out the wine, flares. Calculation. Precise and emotionless. "Really?" she says with fake surprise. "I must have gotten confused, but since I bought it..." She doesn't finish the sentence. Her hand quickly drops to the cake. Her fingers sink into the soft cream. She doesn't take a piece. She grabs a handful. Changmin sees the movement. He could lean away, dodge, grab her wrist, but he doesn't move. He sits in his chair and watches. He accepts this move. He lets her make it. Her hand shoots up. The cold, sticky mass splatters onto his face with a squelching sound. The cream clogs his nostrils, smears across his cheeks, and drips from his chin onto the collar of his new shirt. The sweet, nauseating scent of vanilla fills the air. He doesn't blink. He sits, completely white with cream, and looks at her through this sticky mass. He doesn't wipe himself. He doesn't make a sound. Olivia takes a step back. She looks at her creation, at his impassive face, distorted by the layer of cake, at his hands, resting calmly on the armrests of the chair. He doesn't break down. He doesn't scream. This disappoints her, and it's clear from the sharp movement of her eyebrow. She wanted an explosion. Instead, she got an ice statue. The silence in the office is now thick, sweet, and unbearable. The only sounds are his even breathing and the soft tap of drops of cream on the table. Changmin moves first, very slowly. He raises his hand, not to his face. He reaches for the cake box. His fingers, also covered in frosting, pick up a paper napkin lying nearby. He doesn't wipe his face. He carefully, with disgust, but without fuss, cleans his fingers. Then he places the crumpled napkin right in the center of the cake. He stands up, covered in white cream. He looks both ridiculous and menacing. He approaches her closely. She doesn't retreat, holding his gaze. "Good move," he says quietly, his voice muffled by the layer of cream, but perfectly audible. "Obvious, but effective. Drama, humiliation, all according to plan. He turns and leaves the office. He doesn't rush to wash up. He walks down the hallway slowly, leaving sticky marks on the parquet floor. He lets everyone in the house, the maid, the cook, if there are any, see him like this, so that rumors can spread, so that it becomes clear war has been officially declared, and he has accepted it. Olivia remains standing at the table. She looks at the ruined cake and the napkin in it. Her cold smile disappears. This icy control is what really irritates her. Changmin comes into the kitchen in the evening. Olivia is already there. She looks at his shirt with traces of cream. "Did you like the cake?" she asks in a sweet voice. He silently takes water from the refrigerator. "Enough," he says quietly. "What's enough?" She turns around. "Your coldness? Your arrogance? Stop this game." His voice becomes harsher. "What game? This is our life." She takes a step towards him. Boring and empty. He can't stand it anymore. He grabs her hand abruptly. "Stop it," he says through clenched teeth. She breaks free. She knocks over a bottle of water. It falls to the floor, spilling water. "Don't touch me!" she screams. He pushes her away. Not hard, but she flies back against the countertop. She knocks a knife block onto the floor. The crash echoes throughout the kitchen. They freeze, breathing heavily. He stands in a puddle of water. She stands among scattered knives. Changmin looks at his hands. They are shaking. He has never behaved like this before. She looks at him. There is no fear in her eyes, only surprise. She did not expect such a reaction. He steps back, looks at the mess. "Look what you're doing," he says hoarsely. Olivia silently straightens her robe. Her gaze glides around the kitchen. Around their war. He bends down. He collects the knives. He puts them in the sink. He takes a rag and wipes up the water. She doesn't help. She stands and watches. Then she turns and leaves. Chanming has an important meeting this morning, a very important one, a contract for a major project. He goes to bed early, sets his alarm for 6 in the morning, checks it twice. He needs to get some sleep, to be in shape, but he tosses and turns. He remembers the kitchen, her face, the clatter of knives. He forces himself to think about the contract, about the numbers, about the partners. Finally, he falls asleep. Olivia isn't sleeping. She knows about his meeting. She saw it on the calendar. At night, she gets up. She goes to his bedroom. The door is ajar. He is sleeping, breathing evenly. She sees his phone on the nightstand. The alarm is set. She approaches silently, presses one button. The screen goes dark. The alarm is turned off. She looks at his sleeping face. No emotion, only calculation. Tomorrow he will oversleep. He will be late. This will be her next step. She leaves just as quietly, leaving him in the darkness, where there is no alarm clock, where time has stood still. Changmin opens his eyes. The room is too bright. He feels it instinctively, even before he realizes it. There's no record of it going off in the alarm history. He checks the settings. Everything is off. Then he understands. This is no accident, not a technical glitch. He jumps out of bed. A quiet, cold anger wells up inside him, paralyzing all his movements. He doesn't scream. He doesn't drop the phone. He moves with an unnatural, mechanical speed. He puts on the first suit he comes across. Doesn't tie a tie. He takes his keys and documents. As he passes the living room, he sees her. Olivia is sitting at the table with a cup of coffee. She's reading a magazine. She's wearing a silk robe. She looks like she's having the most peaceful and ordinary day. He stops at the door. She looks up at him. "Are you late?" she asks neutrally, as if asking about the weather. He looks at her. There's no scream or rage in his eyes. There's black, bottomless ice there. He doesn't answer. He just looks. That second is enough for her to understand everything. She sees that he knows. And he sees that she sees. He turns and walks out of the house. The door closes behind him with a quiet but firm click. He races through the city, breaking all speed limits. His face in the rearview mirror is an impenetrable mask. There's only one thought in his head. Make it. Fix it. He bursts into the building. The elevator moves painfully slowly. He gets off at the right floor and approaches the conference room door. Through the glass wall, he sees the room is empty. Empty water glasses and crumpled napkins sit on the large table. A cleaning lady is already wiping it down. The secretary at the counter looks at him with pity. "Mr. Park, they left 10 minutes ago," she says quietly. "We waited for half an hour." Mr. Kim was very unhappy. Changmin stands in the middle of the empty hall. He can hear his own heartbeat, a dull, heavy thud. He wiggles his fists. He imagines the faces of his partners. Kim, who values punctuality above all else. He imagined them checking their watches, shrugging their shoulders, deciding they couldn't do business with him. 6 months of work, investments, negotiations, all to hell. He turns slowly and walks back to the elevator. He doesn't say anything. His back is very straight. He returns home late in the evening. The anger hasn't gone away. It's become something heavy and sharp, like a blade. He goes straight to his office and turns on the computer. Olivia comes in a few minutes later. She's already dressed. She's holding a brochure. I looked at villas in Bali, she begins, as if nothing had happened. I think this one. He looks up at her. She falls silent. What journey? He asks. His voice is quiet and even, but there's a hint of steel in it. Hours. In a week. We agreed, she says, but there's no confidence in her voice. There's no we, he says, looking back at the monitor. And there's no trip either. It's canceled. He opens his email. Finds the booking confirmation email. Cancels it. That's it. It takes 3 clicks. There is silence in the room. Are you kidding me? Her voice rises. I never joke about business, he replies, not looking at her. Because I was late today. I lost a contract. A key contract. The money this project was supposed to bring in won't be going toward villas in Bali. It will be needed to compensate for the losses and save face. The trip is canceled. She is silent. He finally turns to her. You wanted to influence my life? He says. Congratulations. You did. Now enjoy the consequences. Instead of the sea and sun, you'll have a quiet evening at home, alone. As always, he sees her face change. First shock, then anger. Real hot anger. But underneath it, there's something else. Satisfaction? Her plan is working. He's losing control. He's angry. He's getting revenge on her by canceling the trip. That means she can reach him. Wonderful. She breathes. Just wonderful. She throws the brochure on the floor and walks out, slamming the door. Chang Min sits alone in his office. He's just abandoned the last vestige of normalcy between them. Now there's only war between them, and he's just launched an open offensive. An hour later, Olivia returns. She's not crying. It was self-defense. Self-defense? She snorts. Are you defending yourself from me? From your wife? You know what, Chang Min? You're just afraid. Afraid of someone seeing that you have no control over anything. And most of all, you're afraid of losing control over me. He's silent. She's hit the nail on the head, and she can see it. She smiles without joy. The trip was the last thing keeping me here. Now there's only one thing keeping me here, and you won't like it. She leaves, leaving the door open. The threat hangs in the air. He knows these are not empty words. The next day, the gate bell rings. Chang Min sees a taxi on the CCTV monitor. An elderly, dark-skinned woman in a bright suit and carrying 2 huge suitcases emerges. Grace, Olivia's mother. Chen Ming's stomach clenches. Grace had only visited twice in all their years of marriage. Her visits were always a disaster. She didn't warn him. This was all part of the plan. He steps out into the hall just as Olivia opens the door. Mom! Olivia exclaims, with a warmth Chang Min hasn't heard from her in years. They hug. What a surprise. Oh, darling, I just missed you. Grace's voice is loud and commanding. She notices Chang Ming, and her wide smile doesn't change, but her eyes become appraising. Chang Ming, how pale you are. Don't you ever get out in the sun? Grace, he nods, making a minimal effort to smile. An unexpected visit. The best visits are the unexpected ones, she retorts, walking inside, looking around like a general surveying captured territory. Oh, they've rearranged the furniture again. Interesting. She doesn't ask if she can stay. She's just here. Her suitcases stand in the hallway, like occupying forces. From that moment on, the peace in the house vanished. Grace was everywhere. Her loud laughter, her advice, her perfume, which Chang Min couldn't stand. She starts at dinner. Chang Min, I see you work a lot, she says, helping herself to a salad. It's unhealthy. A man should be with his family. He should feel for his wife. And yet, it seems like all you do is count your money. Mom, Olivia tries to interject, but without any real protest. What, Mom? I'm telling the truth. Olivia's bored here all alone. A young woman. She needs attention, romance, and not just restaurant receipts. You probably think flowers once a month is enough? She shakes her head. In our time, men courted. Chang Min eats silently. He knows that any answer will give her an excuse for another lecture. And this house, Grace continues, looking around the interior, very austere. Not a soul in sight. Like a museum. No wonder Olivia feels miserable. I don't feel unhappy, Mom, Olivia says, looking at her plate. No, you feel it, dear. Mother always knows. You need life, and not this golden cage. Chang Min takes a sip of water. He feels this woman methodically, like a jackhammer, breaking down the boundaries of his space, his habits, his authority. She's not overtly rude. She's simply making judgments, without question, and Olivia allows her to do so. Later, he notices Grace pacing the office while he's talking on the phone. She touches his books and straightens the knickknacks on the shelf. I'm just wiping off the dust, dear. Don't pay any attention. she says when he hangs up. He doesn't answer. He looks at the woman's back as she leaves and understands. This isn't just a visit. This is a siege. And Grace is her main weapon. Her job is to completely irritate him, to force him to make a mistake in front of a witness. He grits his teeth. He needs to hold on. But the ticking of the clock in the house where her mother now lives sounds like a countdown to an explosion. The following days turn into a monotonous nightmare. Chan Ming's office, his last fortress, is no longer a refuge. Grace considers it her duty to restore order. He comes in the morning and finds his papers neatly stacked, not in the order he left them. His favorite pen is on the left side of his notebook, not the right. His project folders have been moved from the top shelf to the bottom. Just tidying up a bit, dear, Grace says, appearing in the doorway with a rag in her hand. You've got such a creative mess in here. I can't bear to look at it. Everything was fine here, he says, trying to keep his tone even. My things were fine. Please don't touch my things. Oh, don't worry. I'm just dusting. Men never notice dust, she counters, and goes inside, starting to dust the already dust-free shelves. He can't work. He feels her gaze on him. He hears her sighs and shakes her head as she flips through the spines of his business books. She doesn't read Korean, but she judges by the covers. Everything is so serious, she comments. Not a single book of fiction. The soul needs to rest, Chang-min. He stares silently at the computer screen, pretending to type. His fingers hover over the keys. It's an intrusion. Slow, methodical, masked with concern. One afternoon, the situation reached a boiling point. Chang-min brought a wad of cash from the safe. Large bills. He needed to pay for an urgent, unofficial delivery of materials. The money lay in a neat stack on the edge of his desk, next to the scale used to check the weight of the wads. He turned away to pick up the envelope. At that moment, Grace enters the office with a tray. On the tray are 2 glasses of water. I thought you might want a drink too, she says, placing the tray right next to the money. Grace, be careful, he says, but it's too late. Her hand, moving with sweeping casualness, knocks over one of the glasses. The glass falls. The crystal clinks against the tabletop, but doesn't break. Water splashes in a wide puddle, right onto a stack of banknotes. Oh my God, Grace exclaims, grabbing a napkin. But the water is already soaking in. Dark stains are spreading across the bills, and the ink is starting to bleed slightly. These bills are now turning into wet paper. They won't be able to be used so easily anymore. Chang-min freezes. He watches the water soak into what is not just money to him, but a tool, a symbol of order and efficiency. The stains on the paper look like blood. Grace frantically tries to wipe the bills, only smearing the moisture further and damaging them. It's okay, they'll dry out, she says, but there's not a shred of real regret in her voice. There's even something triumphant in the glance she gives him, and then he understands. Completely and utterly, this wasn't an accident. It was a precise blow, perhaps not planned down to the last detail, but desired, to ruin what's important to him, to humiliate him in his own space, to show that even his money, his control, are nothing compared to her simple concern. This is part of Olivia's plan, to completely infuriate him, to make him explode at her mother, so that Olivia will have a trump card, a witness, the moral high ground. All these days, her advice, her intrusions, her rudeness had been building up inside him like water behind a dam, and that puddle of money became the last straw that broke the bank. His patience doesn't snap with a bang. It snaps with a quiet, icy snap somewhere inside. The rage that's been simmering within him all this time suddenly freezes. It turns into something hard, sharp, and absolutely clear. He doesn't shout. He doesn't slam his fist on the table. He slowly raises his hand. Enough, he says. One word. His voice is quiet, but it cuts the air like a blade. A voice that makes Grace involuntarily fall silent and take her hand away from the wet money. He looks at her. His gaze is no longer that of a son-in-law tolerating an unbearable relative. It is the gaze of a master of a territory that has been invaded. Get out. From my office. Now, he says, articulating each word clearly. And never come back here again. Don't touch my things. Don't bring me food or water. You are a guest here. And your rights as a guest end here. Grace opens her mouth to say something, to object, to hide behind her hurt feelings. But she sees something in his eyes that makes her swallow. It's not emotion. It's a judgment. She mumbles something unintelligible, straightens her robe, and, taking one last look at the wet money, quickly leaves, this time closing the door behind her. Chong-min is left alone. He looks at the ruined bills. The ticking of the clock on the wall sounds loud in the sudden silence. He no longer feels anger. He feels a cold, crystalline clarity. The house has become a battlefield, but from this moment on, it ceases to be the defending side. The siege is over. The time has come for a counterattack. Chang-min sits alone in his office. He looks at the wet money, at the door through which Grace disappeared. The silence after her departure is echoing and drawn out. He listens to the sounds of the house. Somewhere in the kitchen, dishes clatter. It's Grace. From the living room, the muffled sound of the television drifts. Probably Olivia. He looks around his office, a fortress that has been captured. His belongings have been touched by strangers. His routine is ruined. His peace is destroyed. Here he no longer recuperates. Here he only fends off attacks. He remembers the last few days. Wine splattered, cake on his face. The clatter of knives in the kitchen, the turned-off alarm, the lost contract. And now this woman, who methodically erases boundaries. This isn't life. It's a test of endurance. Every day is a new blow. More subtle than the last. The goal is clear: to unsettle him, to force him to make a mistake, perhaps even violence, and then to expose him to the world. He's a tyrant, he's inadequate, he's dangerous, but he's not dangerous. He's accurate, and he sees the game. Home is no longer his refuge. It's a battlefield, mined and occupied by the enemy. There's no rest here. The only options are fight or surrender. Chong-min was not used to giving up. The solution comes not as a flash of insight, but as an inevitable logical conclusion. Calm and cold. If this is war, then we need to change tactics. Defense isn't working. We need to attack. Strike a blow she doesn't expect. Not a counterattack, but the first in a new game. He exhales slowly. He crumples all his emotions, anger, irritation, fatigue, into a small hard ball, and pushes it to the farthest corner of his consciousness. Now he's only calculating. He stands up abruptly. The chair rolls back with a soft thud. He adjusts the cuff of his shirt, though there's no longer any need. It's a gesture that restores a sense of control. He walks toward the door. His steps echo on the parquet floor, confident. He's not rushing, but he's not hesitating either. He knows where to find her. He passes the living room. Grace is sitting there, watching TV, and when he appears, she pretends not to notice him. He ignores her. His target is Olivia. He finds her in the winter garden. She's watering orchids. She's wearing a light house dress. She looks calm, almost carefree, like someone who knows their plan is coming to fruition. She hears his footsteps, but doesn't turn around right away. She finishes watering one plant and sets down the watering can. Then she slowly turns around. Her face is a mask of neutral anticipation. They stand facing each other, surrounded by greenery and flowers. The irony isn't lost on him. A place that imitates life. A place to talk about the end of their life together. "I'm tired of it," Chang-min says without preamble. His voice is perfectly even, businesslike. "I'm tired of these performances. Your scenes. Your mother in my office. Everything." Olivia raises an eyebrow. "I don't know what you're talking about. Mom's just helping. And as for the scenes, you're the one causing them." He doesn't argue. He delivers a prepared line. The divorce papers are already being processed. The lawyer will have everything ready by the end of the week. It's like a blast of air after an explosion. For a moment, the mask on Olivia's face cracks. Something flashes in her eyes. Not shock, but rather surprise at the speed. She expected the war to continue, but not such a direct assault. She quickly regains her composure. "Divorce?" she says, and the familiar notes of a hurt wife appear in her voice. "Because of what? Because I was upset? Because Mom came to visit? Because you declared war on me," he corrects coldly. "And I accept it, but on my terms. One condition. This ends now." He pauses, letting the words hang in the air. "I order you to sign the papers immediately as soon as they are ready, and pack your things. You are moving out of here. Today, your mother. Tomorrow, you." She looks at him, and there's no pretense in her gaze now. There's cold, living hatred and passion. His move was powerful, and she appreciated it. "You're giving orders?" she asks quietly. "You're not my boss, Chong-min. In this house, you are a commander," he retorts. "And my orders are to clear the area. The family game is over. You've got your war. Congratulations. Now reap the consequences." He turns to leave, but throws another phrase over his shoulder, this time from the doorway. "Get ready. By the end of the week, there will be nothing left of you here." He walks away, leaving her alone among the flowers. His heart beats steadily and strongly. The first blow of the counterattack has been struck. He has called a spade a spade. Now everything depends on how she responds. But he no longer waits passively. He dictates the rules. His words hang in the air of the winter garden, heavy and final. "Get ready. By the end of the week, There will be nothing left of you here. Olivia doesn't move. She watches him until he's out of sight. Then her gaze slowly moves over the orchid leaves, the expensive wicker furniture, the glass roof. She doesn't look upset. She looks focused, like a chess player who's just been dealt an unexpected move by her opponent and is now calculating her response. I command, she repeats his words silently, only with her lips. Then she says out loud, "You have a very specific vocabulary for family conversations." "This isn't a family conversation," he retorts coldly. "This is an enemy evacuation from captured territory, and you have no choice." She leans back in his chair. The folds of her dress fall softly, and a smile appears on her lips. Not triumphant, not angry, calm and confident, like a person holding the best cards in their hand. "That's what's funny, Chang-min," she says slowly. "You're talking about documents that will be ready tomorrow, but I prepared them 2 weeks ago, as soon as I realized our little war was inevitable." He thought she was waging a guerrilla war with petty dirty tricks, but she had long ago opened a second legal front. This folder in his own drawer is the best example of her impudence and calculation. He approaches the desk, but doesn't take the folder. "Your lawyer?" he asks again. "I hope he's a good one, because my people will check every comma." "I hope your people are good too," she answers easily, "because my lawyer's one of the best in the city for prenuptial agreements and property divisions, especially complex property matters. He's already done all the research." She speaks in hints, but they're clear. Complex assets are his business, his connections, everything they don't like, to show off. The next day, they sit down at the large dining table, not as husband and wife, but as two parties to a conflict. On the table is the same blue folder and Chanming's laptop, with a file from his lawyer open. Grace has been sent out into the city under the pretext of shopping. The house is empty, and the silence is deafening. They pretend it's normal, that they've been working toward this moment for a long time. "Probably, this is what should have been done years ago," Olivia begins, unfolding the folder. Her voice is businesslike, emotionless. "We're too different." "Agreed," Changmin nods, looking at the screen. "Incompatible systems. Better to stop using them before they completely collapse." They speak deliberately dryly, technically, avoiding anything personal. It's as if they're discussing the liquidation of an unsuccessful joint venture. "My terms are simple," Olivia says, laying out several sheets of paper. "A division of property, as stipulated in our prenuptial agreement, but taking into account emotional damages and loss of prospects. I want this house, all of it, and a lump sum compensation. The figure is here," she points to the sum. "It's huge, but not prohibitive. It's a sum that says, I've studied your capabilities and know how much you can take out without starting a real war." Changming looks at the number, then at her. "A house?" he asks again. "An absolutely ridiculous demand. Do you know why it was bought and with whose money?" "I know," she smiles, "and that's why I want it. As a symbol, compensation is for the future. And the house, it's a trophy." He studies her face silently. She's not joking. "What do I get in return?" he asks. "Besides your happy face in the doorway?" "You'll get peace of mind," she replies simply. "And a guarantee that I won't go to any regulatory agencies with stories about certain aspects of your business and some of your methods. I have a diary, a very detailed one for the last 3 years. My lawyer has reviewed it. This is an open threat, pure, unvarnished." He doesn't blink. "I have some records too," he says quietly, "about your rather large spending from the joint account, about your personal projects financed with my money. The tax authorities might find this interesting. Is your lawyer familiar with this too?" They stare at each other across the table. Neither of them takes their eyes off each other. The air smells of mutual destruction. "Looks like we're at a stalemate," Olivia finally says, and for the first time, respect appears in her voice. Not for him as a husband, but for him as an opponent. "Looks like it," Changmin agrees. "Then we'll have to negotiate." They spend several hours at the table. They discuss interest rates, terms, real estate, confidentiality. Every concession is wrested with a fight. But on the surface, it all looks civilized. Two adults dividing their property sensibly. No shouting, just arguments, figures, and a cold, assessing gaze. They both understand this is just the first round. Signing the papers isn't the end. It's just a change of battlefield. But now they're playing this game, the game of civilized divorce, and both are playing it flawlessly. The negotiations were over. The final agreement, printed in duplicate, lay on the table. It contained the dry language of lawyers, turning their marriage and war into clauses about asset division and confidentiality. The smile of someone about to cross the finish line. She picked up her fountain pen, an expensive, heavy one, A gift from him in another life. Slowly uncapped it. Well then, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. It's time to put an end to this. She raised her pen to the signature line beneath her name. The pen touched the paper. She wrote her signature, spreading, elegant, with a huge, proud capital O. The ink lay smoothly, without smudges. She dated it. Then she repeated the process on the second copy. She pushed the signed sheets away from her and placed her pen next to her. The sound of the pen hitting the table was His face was a stony mask, revealing no regret, no anger, no triumph, only a deep, almost detached concentration. He picked up his own pen, plain, black, unadorned, yet incredibly expensive and perfectly balanced in his fingers. He pulled the first copy of the contract toward himself. His gaze slid over the text, not reading it, merely checking for Olivia's signature and the cleanliness of the page. He placed the tip of his pen on the line, a moment of stillness. Then his hand made several quick, practiced movements. He signed his name. His signature was quite different, compact, consisting of a complex but quickly executed monogram that few could reproduce offhand. It looked more like a seal than an autograph. He repeated the same thing on the second copy. He put the pen down. Both documents, signed by both parties, now lay between them. It seemed all was over. The paper sealed the end of their union, and, as Olivia saw it, her victory in a grueling struggle. Olivia exhaled slowly. The exhalation was like a weight being lifted. She leaned back in her chair, and now her smile blossomed in all its fullness, broad, unrestrained, triumphant. A sparkle she'd been suppressing for so long flared in her eyes. "Well, that's it," she said, and her voice took on a new tone, authoritative and light. "Thank you for your cooperation. Now, please, you may begin packing your things. I thought you promised me I would leave this house. A slight correction. You are the one leaving, and preferably in the next few days." She savored every word, watching his reaction. "The house," she continued, pausing dramatically, "with all its walls, ceilings, and, most importantly, the ground beneath it, according to the final and only true version of the deed, which my lawyer scribbled into the appendices in minute print, belongs to me, completely and unconditionally. Your signature on this," she pointed dismissively at the document, "is your agreement to leave. The compensation you pay is simply a nice bonus. The grand prize is all of this." She waved her hand around the luxurious dining room, this entire house that was their battlefield. Chongming didn't move. His expression didn't change. He simply stared at her. And this stillness, this lack of the expected reaction, shock, rage, disbelief, began to extinguish the smile on her face. Her confidence began to show its first crack. "You're too predictable, Olivia," he finally said. His voice was quiet, calm, almost bored. "I knew you couldn't handle things like this alone, without my lawyer, especially when you so easily agreed to give up the house in the main text. That was not your style." He slowly raised his hand and pointed to his signature on the paper. "Do you see this signature? Take a closer look." She automatically glanced over the neat lines. "It's beautiful, but it's not my signature," he continued. "Or rather, not the one registered with banks, notaries, and property registries. It's a fake. A very high-quality one. I practiced, but it's a fake. I sign my real signature differently. One little flourish in a different place. Without that flourish, any document, especially a real estate transfer, is legally null and void. My lawyer taught me this long ago. For, well, exactly these kinds of situations." He paused, letting her process it. "You signed your copies. I signed them with a forgery. That means the contract is valid for you. You'll get your money from the small projects. But the house remains where it belongs, with me, because the document transferring it to you is invalid. You can, of course, try to challenge this in court, proving that I deliberately forged the signature. But that will require expert analysis, time, and a lot of fuss. And all the while my lawyer will be digging through your diaries, expenses, and projects. I don't think you'd want that kind of publicity." Olivia sat paralyzed. Her face went white. Triumph gave way to utter devastation, and then to a chilling rage. She looked from his calm face to the signature on the paper, trying to find the difference he'd described. She couldn't find it. He'd outplayed her. He'd allowed her to taste victory, only to snatch it away at the last second, humiliating her even further. "You," she began, but her voice broke. "I bet on your greed," he finished for her, standing up. "And I was right. You were so eager to get it all, you didn't even bother inviting your best-in-town lawyer to the signing ceremony to check my signature. You were too confident. Pack your things, Olivia. The real divorce papers, honest and without your fine print, will be ready tomorrow. You'll get what we agreed on yesterday. Not a cent more, not a cent less, and not a square inch of this house. He picked up his copy of the contract from the table, bearing her real signature and his fake one. He folded it carefully. And this, he shook the sheet lightly, will go in my safe, as a souvenir, about how not to make deals. He walked out of the dining room, leaving her sitting at the table with her copies of her now useless victory. The sound of his retreating footsteps was the only thing breaking the absolute deafening silence. She couldn't take her eyes off his signature. Her gaze darted between the neat lines on the paper and his calm, almost detached face. Her ears were ringing. The triumph that had been swelled within her a moment ago had crumbled to dust, leaving behind emptiness and a rising wave of humiliation. Changming didn't leave immediately. He stood, watching as it sank in, and a smile appeared on his lips, usually so tight and stern, not wide, not malicious, cold, thin, like a razor blade. It didn't reach his eyes, which remained dark and impenetrable. This smile was unique to her, the physical embodiment of his superiority in this moment. You knew, she finally breathed out. It wasn't a question. It was a bitter, clear admission. All her complicated maneuvers, this whole weeks-long play with the scandals, the cake, the mother, he'd seen right through it all. And he'd silently allowed her to play, knowing how it would all end. From the very beginning, he confirmed, nodding. His voice was quiet, as if sharing an invisible secret. From that night, when you poured wine on me, that was too abrupt a transition, Olivia. You've always been calculating. And now, hysteria for no reason. Too theatrical. You wanted to create the image of an insulted wife, so that later, during the heated divorce, you could push through your real terms while I was unsettled. Standard tactic. Predictable. He took a small step toward the table, resting his palms on the back of his chair. I decided to let you have your fun, so you'd feel safe. So you'd finally get that no-lose deal from your brilliant lawyer. I was curious to see what you'd decide on. She was silent, her lips pressed so tightly together they turned white. Her hands lay on the table, her fingers digging into the wood. The signature, he continued, pointing to the document. It's the key to everything in my world. Money, property, power. It can't be trusted to anyone, not even a wife, especially a wife who suddenly decided to become an enemy. He pulled his diary from his inside jacket pocket. He opened it to the last page. There, among other notes, was that very real signature. Next to it were several nearly identical ones, but with subtle differences. Here it is. See that curl at the end of the second letter? It's pointing upward and curled inward. On the contract, he pointed at the sheet of paper in front of her. The curl curves downward and lies to the side. To the untrained eye, even to yours, they are the same signature. To a machine, to an expert system, they are not. They are two different identifiers. He closed the planner and put it away. My lawyer prepared 5 variations of these for me. Easy to execute, but legally invalid for special cases. This one, he nodded at the agreement, is exactly the Olivia case. We figured you'd try to sneak something in through the fine print or the addendums. Your move with the house was even more direct than we thought. Greed blinds. You were so eager to hear me tell you to get out that you decided to do the same trick, but louder. Olivia finally stirred. She slowly raised her head. There was no longer any fury in her eyes. There was something worse, utter defeat and an icy, merciless understanding. She looked at him not as a husband, but as an operative who had just completed a flawless operation. And all this time, you just watched, she whispered. You let me make a fool of myself, make a bad picture of myself in front of my friends. Let your mother dirty your office. Let me think I was winning. I was studying, he corrected coldly. I was collecting data. Every stunt, every provocation confirmed my theory and gave me additional leverage. Your diary you spoke of? I'm almost certain it exists. And now, knowing your methods, my people will be able to gain access to it, or, at the very least, prove that its contents are the revenge of an embittered woman. And your expenses and projects, they are very real. And unlike your threats, my documents are bank statements. They don't lie. He straightened, his figure once, again dominating the room. Here's how things will unfold, Olivia. You will take your mother and leave here today. You will stay in a hotel that I will pay for 2 weeks. During that time, my lawyers will prepare a new, clean, and transparent divorce agreement. You will receive exactly what you were entitled to under the original prenuptial agreement, plus a small additional amount as a gesture of goodwill on my part. No house, no hidden clauses. And if I refuse, if I go to court? There was a final, weak challenge in her voice. Then, he said, without hesitation, I will release the CCTV footage from the living room that evening, with sound of you, cold and calculating, pouring wine on me without a single sincere emotion on your face, and I will present the psychologist's conclusion that it was a planned provocation. Your image of the insulted wife will crumble to dust. And then the war of annihilation you so desired will begin. But now, I assure you, I will have more resources and moral authority. You didn't lose when I revealed the signature. You lost the moment you decided to play unfairly with me, thinking I wouldn't notice the rules. He turned and headed for the door. He glanced back at the threshold. The guest room where your mother is staying will be ready for your departure in 3 hours. A taxi will be waiting. Don't make me discuss this with her in person. He walked out, leaving the door open. Olivia remained sitting in the dining room, in the center of the deserted battlefield. Beautiful, meaningless sheets of paper lay before her. Her victory, transformed into a monument to her own defeat. The cold smirk, frozen in the air, burned her more than any scream. Olivia sat at the table for a long time. At first, she didn't move. Then her gaze slowly, centimeter by centimeter, scanned the dining room. Large, perfect, cold. She saw a reflection in the polished surface of the table. A pale face with dark, empty eyes. The face of a loser. The thought hit her with full force. She had lost. Not the argument, not the fight. She had lost the war she had started. Her cunning, which she had nurtured for weeks, was childish compared to his cold, methodical calculation. He knew. He had known from the very beginning, and he had simply watched her fuss, lose face, become hysterical in the eyes of their mutual acquaintances, only to then lay this win-win agreement on the table. And he had let her do it. He had allowed her to taste victory, sweet and dizzying, only to snatch it from under her nose in one movement. A false signature. It had been so simple, so humiliatingly simple. She remembered every episode, how she rehearsed that scene with the wine, adjusting her tone, how she gloated when he overslept, how she enjoyed the look of his tense face when her mother lectured him. She thought she was leading him, like a bull in the arena, to the final injection, and he walked willingly because he knew the way better than she did. He was leading her to the trap she had set for herself. Shame rose from her stomach, hot and sickening. She hadn't just lost. She had made herself look foolish, ambitious, greedy, and stupid. In his eyes, that was exactly what she was now. Not a dangerous opponent, but an incompetent amateur. She picked up the very same copy of the contract from the table. Her fingers slid over her own sweeping, confident signature. She had been so proud of it. Now it looked like a clown's signature against his cold, perfectly executed fake. Slowly, very slowly, she crumpled the sheet in her hand. The paper crunched, giving way. She squeezed it into a tight ball, digging into her palm. But it changed nothing. He had a second copy. He had all the proof of her stupidity. She looked up at the ceiling, trying to contain something. Tears? A fit of rage? But inside there was only emptiness and a freezing cold. Her plan had failed, not because of an accident, not because of a lawyer's error. It had failed because her opponent was several levels higher. He was thinking ahead, while she was enjoying momentary triumphs. The defeat was total. She had lost more than just the house she'd set her sights on. She had lost face, and worst of all, she had lost the initiative. He was now calling the shots. He was offering her a goodwill gesture after he'd crushed her. And the worst part was, she had no choice but to accept it. His threat about the security footage wasn't a bluff. She knew the system. The sound was excellent. Her cold, calculated tone that night would have been damning in court. She unclenched her fingers. The crumpled ball of paper fell onto the table with a dull thud. Defeat, complete and utter. She stood up. Her legs obeyed her, but her movements were mechanical. Like a doll's. She left the dining room and walked down the hallway. She didn't go to her dressing room or her bedroom. She went up to the second floor, to a small room she called her craft room. There was a large steel safe there, built into the wall behind a painting. Not the one in his office, her own. She opened it. Inside, there wasn't jewelry. There were passports, documents for her personal accounts he didn't control, several blank credit cards in a different name, keys to an apartment in Europe bought long ago through frontmen, and a thick wad of cash in various currencies. It was her getaway suitcase, saved for a rainy day. She'd thought she'd use it after her triumph, riding off to a new life with his money. Now she needed it to escape the battlefield. She took a small duffel bag, also kept here, and filled it with the most valuable items from the safe. She acted quickly, without fuss. Then she went to her dressing room. She didn't take dresses, fur coats, or dozens of pairs of shoes. She took one simple but expensive suit, a couple of blouses, comfortable low-heeled shoes, and a minimal set of underwear and cosmetics. Everything fit into one large wheeled bag and a duffel bag. She didn't look back at the rest. These things reeked of a past life. A life in which she was Changmin's wife and thought she could outsmart him. She called the elevator to take her bags down. While she waited, she went into the guest room. Her mother, Grace, was dozing in the chair in front of the TV. "Mom," Olivia said in a flat, lifeless voice. "Wake up. We're leaving. Now." "What? Where?" What happened? Grace blinked in fear, looking around. We've lost. Pack your things. We don't have much time. She didn't explain. The tone of her voice left no room for questions. Grace, seeing her daughter's expression, empty and frightened, fluttered silently. Changmin didn't show up, but she knew he was watching. Cameras were everywhere. He watched her come down with the bags, wake her mother, and the two of them, in complete silence, pack Grace's suitcases. He let them go. It was part of his victory, to let them leave on their own, without making a scene. 40 minutes later, they were standing in the hallway by the front door. Their luggage lay nearby, behind the glass wall by the gate. A taxi, apparently called by him, was waiting. Olivia put on her coat. She looked back, one last time. She saw the reflection of the enormous chandelier in the black marble floor. She saw the door to his office, closed. She saw the stairs leading up to that very dining room, where the crumpled piece of paper lay. There were no feelings, no hatred, no regret, only an immense, all-consuming weariness, and the taste of dust from one's own defeat. She took her mother's hand and opened the heavy door. The cold night air hit them in the face. She didn't look back again. She didn't look for him in the windows. She helped her mother into the taxi and loaded her luggage. She sat down next to her. The driver, probably given clear instructions, pulled away. The car drove through the gates, which closed silently behind her. She looked ahead, at the road disappearing into the darkness. The house, the site of her great war, was left behind. It disappeared from view, like a set from someone else's dream. She didn't say a word the entire drive. Grace muttered something, asked questions, but Olivia didn't hear. She stared out the window at the flickering lights of the city. Her plan, her dreams of wealth and revenge, her confidence, it all remained there, in that house, crumpled into a single ball of paper. She was leaving with what she came with, her cunning, which turned out to be petty, and her mother. He kept everything else for himself, including victory. The taxi disappeared into the night traffic. A light was on in the window of Changming's second-floor house. He stood there, watching the car's taillights disappear. Then he pulled the heavy curtain closed. Silence fell over the house. Real silence. No crash of falling coasters, no loud advice from Grace, no caustic remarks from Olivia. Only the ticking of the clock and the crackling of the fireplace in the living room. The war ended, not with a truce, but with the complete capitulation of one side. He had won. He remained in his home, in his perfect, controlled world. He took a deep breath. The air was clean. It no longer smelled of foreign perfume, pretense, or war. He turned and went to his office. Work awaited. Changmin stood in the middle of the living room. The taxi carrying Olivia and her mother had disappeared from view half an hour ago. He pulled down the heavy curtain, blocking out the world outside. But the silence he'd been hoping for came upon him not as relief, but as a physical oppression. He'd grown accustomed to a certain background sound. Even in the last weeks of the war, it had been Olivia's footsteps on the parquet floor, Grace's loud voice, the clink of dishes as she moved them around with deliberate force. Now there was only the steady, unbearable hum of absolute silence, interrupted by the occasional crackle of dying logs in the fireplace. He walked from the living room to the dining room. The table was empty. Only in the center, as if mockingly, lay the very same crumpled ball from the contract. He walked over, picked it up, and unfolded it. The door was open. The shelves, always tightly packed, now gaped with empty spaces. She'd taken disappointingly little. Dozens of dresses, suits, bags, and a closet full of furs remained. The scent of her perfume, a complex, floral woody scent, still lingered in the air, but now it was ghostly, like a memory. He walked into her boudoir. Bottles, brushes, and an unfinished glass of water remained on the dressing table. He picked up one of the bottles and opened it. The scent assaulted his nose, the same one he had been smelling all these years. He quickly screwed the cap back on. He felt stifled. He went down to his office and sat down in his chair. The computer was on, graphs and figures frozen on the screen. He tried to concentrate on the report. The numbers danced before his eyes, making no sense. His gaze fell on the carpet, where Grace had spilled water on the money. A barely noticeable stain remained. Despite the cleaning service's efforts, he had won. He had proven his superiority, outmaneuvered them, secured his territory and assets. He should have felt triumphant, pride, relief. But instead, he felt only a vast, ringing emptiness. He had driven the enemy from the fortress, but he remained alone among the cold walls. His victory had been flawless from a tactical standpoint, but utterly fruitless from a human standpoint. There was no one to convince, no one to defeat, no one to fight. There remained only himself in this silence, in which the echo of his own thoughts resounded all too loudly. He stood, walked to the bar, and poured himself a whiskey, the very same kind she detested. He took a sip. The sharpness of the alcohol brought no warmth. He looked at his reflection in the dark window, a victor in an impeccable suit, alone in a vast, immaculate house. This image, which he had once considered a goal, now seemed like a poster of an alien, soulless life. He turned off the light in his office and walked out into the hall. His footsteps echoed loudly in the empty space. He had won the war, but now he had to live in a world devastated by it. The hotel was one of the most expensive in the city. A suite on the top floor offered a panoramic view of Seoul at night. Changmin kept his promise. 2 weeks, all paid. It was the final gesture, the final humiliation, to be indebted to him even for this temporary cage. Olivia stood by the window, her forehead pressed against the cold glass. Behind her, her mother, Grace, finally emboldened, was speaking her mind. "I told you this plan was crazy. You can't do this to him. He's like a rock. You thought he'd just let you take everything? Now what? What are we going to do?" Her voice was high and shrill with fear and resentment. "Shut up, Mom," Olivia said without turning around. Her voice was quiet, but it held such an icy edge that Grace instantly fell silent, only letting out a loud breath. Olivia looked at the sea of lights below. Somewhere out there, in one of those neighborhoods, was that house, his house, where the light was on in the office right now, and he was probably sitting there sipping his whiskey, feeling victorious. Her fingers clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. The pain was sharp and clear. The only real sensation in her numb body, shame retreated. A concentrated, crystallized rage took its place. Not hysterical, but cold and heavy as lead. He'd outwitted her, humiliated her, forced her to leave like a servant caught stealing. She imagined his face, that expression of cold sneer as he explained about the fake signature. Every word burned inside her. She turned away from the window. Her face in the mirror opposite was pale, her eyes glowing with a dark, tearless fire. She had lost the battle, the most important one, but the war isn't necessarily over. She went to her travel safe, which stood by her bed. She opened it. She took out neither a wad of cash nor her passports. She pulled out an old, unremarkable push-button phone, a live phone, not linked to her. She turned it on. The battery was almost full. She went into the bathroom and turned on the water to drown out any possible noise. She dialed a number she knew by heart. The number of a man who disliked Changmin almost as much as she did now. A competitor, a man with dirty methods and great ambitions. "Hello?" a rough male voice answered. "It's Olivia," she said clearly. "You were right. My way didn't work. His way was... Well, anyway." There was laughter on the other end of the line, dryly, without humor. "I'm sorry. So what now?" "Now," Olivia said, looking at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, "we do it your way. I have information, not the kind in the diaries, real information, about supplies, about routes, about people who prefer to remain in the shadows, and about weak points in his security system that even his chief engineer doesn't know. I lived in this house for 10 years. I saw and heard more than he thinks." She paused, letting her interlocutor weigh the offer. "But my price has changed. Money, that goes without saying. But I need a guarantee. A guarantee that after you get what you want, he'll have nothing left. No business, no reputation. Not this damned house. I want him to end up at rock bottom, lower than I am now." There was a long pause. Then the voice replied, "It's ambitious, expensive, and time-consuming." "I have time," Olivia retorted coldly, "and now I have no illusions. You get the data and the inside man. I get the funding and your resources for the final solution. We'll discuss the details tomorrow, at the place we discussed." She hung up without waiting for an answer. She turned off the phone, removed the battery and SIM card, and hid everything in different pockets of her bag. She came out of the bathroom. Grace looked at her with fear. "Who were you talking to? What were you planning?" she whispered. "I was planning to live, Mom," Olivia answered, and for the first time all evening, life appeared in her voice. Not warm, but dangerous, like a blade. "Really? And for that, someone will have to disappear." She went to the minibar and poured herself a water. Her hand didn't shake. Humiliation and rage had melted inside her into something else, into determination, into a cold, merciless focus. She looked at the city lights. Now they weren't a symbol of her defeat, but a map of the future battlefield. She'd lost one game as a wife. Now she was starting a new one. Free of that status, free of any rules he imposed. Her methods would be different. His world was stronger than she thought, so she needed to find a weakness not in his business, but within himself, and she had an idea where to look. She put down the glass. The smile that appeared on her lips had nothing to do with happiness. It was the grin of a predator sensing a new scent. That night, at home, Changmin finally fell asleep in his bedroom. His sleep was restless, shallow. He dreamed not of victories, but of sounds. The click of Olivia's heels on the stairs, which was no longer there, and the distant, haunting ringing of a telephone that no one but him could hear. And at the hotel, just a few kilometers away, Olivia wasn't sleeping. She sat in the dark, looking out over the city, mentally plotting plans for revenge that were no longer impulsive, but had become the strategy for the rest of her life. The silence in the winner's house and the silence in the loser's hotel room were different. His silence was empty, an echo of a finished story. Hers was tense, thick with unspoken thoughts and new promises made to herself. They both thought it was over, but for both of them, it was only the end of the beginning. One remained in a past that had suddenly become too quiet. The other stepped into a future that had become too dark. And neither could return to what had been before the war.